Welcome back, guys. I appreciate you being here. Smash the like button if you enjoy the show. And in today's video, as always, we're going to look at a bunch of UFO videos, paranormal videos, unexplainable stuff. Try to make sense of it, explain it, possibly debunk it. So that's what we're going to do, as always, in this episode today. But before we get into today's clips, I want to share a little moment with you guys, okay? Because just 2 days ago, this massive meteorite, asteroid, I don't know, came down over Portugal. And as I was watching this event unfolding on social media, I was like, yeah, this is what would be happening if you would see, for example, a bright glowing light over an urban area. The other week we looked at this massive triangle, this pyramid hovering over the Pentagon, rotating, and we get like 2 or 3 views of it. This, what we saw with this event happening in Portugal, is what would happen if a bright light or a giant spaceship would be flying over some kind of urban area where millions of people live. And we're getting countless videos of this happening, okay? So dash cam footage, we're getting doorbell footage, and all of these videos clearly show exactly the same thing. So it's visible for less than 10 seconds. I mean, well, yeah, around 10 seconds, I'm guessing. And the amount of footage we're getting is insane, okay? I mean, look, there's a point to be made about saying this is a meteorite, an asteroid, whatever. It's way high up in the sky. It was extremely bright. Also, it didn't happen at like 4 in the morning when less people are on the street. So I can see that there are arguments to be made against it. So I think every time you see a video of a giant UFO, some kind of light hovering over an urban area, and there's like one video of it, your alarm bell should be going off. If you have a city with more than 1 million people living in it and something like that flies over the city, this is the result you get. You get an unlimited amount of videos that show unmistakably the same thing, okay? Make of this whatever you want. I'm just saying, footage like this and events like that really should operate as a filter for you. If you're a UFO believer and you find a single video of a giant UFO over an urban area, then, you know, we can fairly assume, unless it's a huge coincidence, that it's probably not real. But anyway, let's get into the first video, and that kind of seamlessly links into what I just spoke about. Fire in the sky. Is it a meteorite? Is it not? So this one was spotted in Miami, Florida. Let's take a look. I don't think we have to watch the whole thing, but I was puzzled by this, right? I saw this and I was like, okay, this is clearly moving. It's moving in the sky. And then check out what happens in about a second. And I appreciate she's cleaning the lens here. Okay, you want to have a nice clean lens without streaks going over the screen and all that. Look how big it gets. Look how it glows in some parts of these clouds, and then it moves past it. And you can clearly see that it's moving, that it's almost changing directions. So you can see if I'm fast forwarding through this footage, you can kind of see it really looks like some sort of fire in the sky. And then it kind of just descends what seems to be into outer space. So puzzling footage. I really liked it. I wasn't aware of what it is exactly. But in this particular case, we even get community notes on Twitter telling us what it is. Okay, so this is just a SpaceX launch taken on July 29th, 2023, showing the Falcon Heavy Jupiter 3 Echo Star 24. And there's even a reference video. So you get an idea. And once you know this actually makes a lot more sense, right? Because you can really see the trajectory of it being like a rocket. And then also, the reason why it was so bright in the beginning of this video is probably because that was just post-launch. So it's fairly close to Earth, illuminating the clouds as it like flies through them. But then obviously as it gets higher and higher into space and closer to the edge of our atmosphere, then the light subsides. Obviously, there's less oxygen. You'll see the flame less bright. They're exploding off the tanks, the fuel tanks and all that. So the objects get smaller. And it just perfectly makes sense, right? It's exactly what it is. But again, whether it's a meteorite or whether it's an object like this would be puzzling if you don't know that there's a SpaceX launch. This would puzzle me for sure. If I would see this in reality, I wouldn't necessarily understand it, but that doesn't mean you should automatically jump to conclusions and think it's aliens and UFO, okay? So we got this one. Debunked! Next one on the list is a Moon UFO, and you know I love those, okay? Like objects flying over the surface of the moon, people capturing them with their telescopes and stuff. So here we have a Japanese tweet, and this guy says, I hope the translation is correct, when astronomy enthusiasts were observing the moon, I accidentally captured a huge UFO about to land on the other side of the moon. Okay, so here he is capturing the moon. So he's zooming into the moon and you can see there's a little white dot. Is there a little white dot on that top side of the moon? All right. And you can see, oh, look at this. There's a little object descending, coming almost out of this object that's hovering over the moon, seemingly going down to the surface, docking with it, right? And we don't know what's going on here. What is this? Could it possibly be a supply drop to the dark side of the moon? Because we all know there's loads of aliens on the dark side of the moon, right? We're all aware of this. We've seen the pictures of all those structures that are totally credible. Maybe I need to do a separate video about the structures on the moon at some point. But it's intriguing. You see this object coming down. It's, from our point of view, very, very small. However, people in the comments, in the Japanese comments, and I have translated most of these comments, to be honest, just to figure out what's going on, have found out that if this would be accurate, taking measurements of objects, of craters that are on the moon, this object would be 34 kilometers in length. Also, people have estimated from the distance of this object hovering above the surface of the moon, the ship going down to the surface would have needed to be like 10,000 miles per hour fast or something like this. Obviously, it all looks very small and very slow from our point of view, but if you would be on the moon, this would be moving extremely fast. This object would be extremely long and just ginormous. So here's my point. I personally think this is CGI, and you can kind of see it because there seems to be some disconnect of how this object tracks to the surface of the moon. If you look at it, every now and then it seems to be wobbling around. It's not perfectly sitting in place. And I understand, we're looking through the atmosphere of the Earth, right? Which obviously has like, or creates atmospheric distortion. So that would naturally kind of create this wavy feeling you get, which you see on the surface of the moon here as well. But again, it kind of comes back to what I said in the beginning. A 34-kilometer object hovering over the moon, and this is the only video that we're getting? Surely something like this would have been picked up by other observers, by other enthusiastic astronomers, by actual astronomers who are observing the moon. An object like that would not go under the radar, no pun intended. People would have found out, people would have registered it, and it would have been photographed from more than one angle. One more point to mention is, it's kind of, look, I don't know how exactly this camera technology works these days, mobile phones zooming in like crazy into the moon and stuff, but you can kind of see as he's zooming into the moon here in the beginning, this is roughly the footage you would get with, or the amount of detail you would get with a mobile phone camera. Even the newer ones, you might get a little bit more detail out of it, but it's unlikely that you would get the detail that you see in the shot. Now, notice two things. Here, the moon looks really, really blurry in this particular shot, and the background is a very light blue. So now, as he's zooming in, suddenly the moon turns much more crisp, and the background darkens, right? Notice this, right? As he's zooming in. So my theory is, this is my theory, obviously I can't prove this, that these are two separate films, and the second part of the film might just be a static image, okay? So I think in this zoom that we're seeing now, he switched between two images. There's the crisp image of the moon, and there's his mobile phone footage of the moon. And he zooms in, he overlaid it with this crisp image of the moon, and now we're just looking at a static image. This is a static image. And then he overlaid the fake atmospheric distortion. He overlaid a little bit of the clouds, right? Because you can see some clouds flying by, which obviously is like coming from the Earth, right? These are the clouds that sit around the Earth. But this is all stuff you can fake fairly easily. It's not a huge task to add these clouds in there and add a little bit of like atmospheric distortion just when it comes to CGI. So I think it's fake. Personally, I think it's CGI. I think someone made it up. And I think they're basically using two different images when they did this zoom that you just saw there. And then this object that you see up here is just chopped in, right? It's just overlaid. They did that with 3D software, some kind of After Effects or whatever, augmenting it into it. Because even the tracking of the object to the moon, I don't think that's just the atmospheric distortion. I think that is also like unprofessional tracking, which looks like the object is like wobbling around a little bit and moves. It's not that well done, and even if they might get away with it for the untrained eye, for someone who looks at CGI and stuff like this all the time, this stands out. So I'm gonna give it, I don't have a concrete answer, but I mean, there are so many indicators. I'm gonna give it a small debunk, okay? Small, cute debunk. There it is. Now, the last clip we're going to look at today was sighted in Honolulu in Hawaii in October 2020. And it's funny, if you read the comments, right, there are loads of people saying, well, I didn't believe in UFOs until I was stationed in Pearl Harbor and saw them one night alone in how do you say that? Oahu. And a bunch of people replying that they believe that Hawaii has to be a UFO hotspot. Guys, it's a UFO hotspot. So let's look at this UFO sighted over Honolulu in Hawaii in 2020. Now, these guys are swearing a lot in the background, so I'm going to turn it down, but they're basically like, what the F is this? What is it, mate? It's a UFO. And they're basically immediately jumping to conclusions. Now, it's funny because it kind of looks like an AR rifle with lights on it, right? It has like this elongated shape, the clip here, and then the handle back there. Well, people are assuming that it's a giant UFO, and it's got a bunch of lights that don't seem to follow any particular pattern. Some of the lights are blinking, right? You can see that. It does not seem to indicate, you know, like with some of UFOs, you got like a clear triangular shape. You got 3 lights underneath or whatever that have like shape of triangle. This seems to be just like an irrational shape. There's not much to this in terms of a defined shape, but since the video is fairly long, it's 2 minutes, I will assume that it's not CGI. I don't think this has been done in a computer, and whatever it is, I think it probably literally flew over Honolulu in Hawaii that time. Unfortunately, as it is so often, this was filmed with a potato, and not even a good potato, so we're getting really, really awful footage, but you get an idea, right? It is like an aggregation of lights that seem to be hovering over Honolulu. And I mean, to be honest, I look at stuff like this, and the first thing that comes to my mind is like, why would aliens have lights under their ships? That just makes no sense. Unless you want to communicate or you want to be seen. I will assume that aliens don't necessarily want to be seen. So why would you even consider putting these bright lights under your ship, which we see over and over again? But don't get me wrong, it is intriguing, especially with the blinking lights and stuff. That seems to indicate some kind of mechanical device, right? Like, what would be blinking like that unless it's an actual light that comes on and off? Now, there is an explanation for it that obviously nobody in the comments found out because everyone's going crazy about how Hawaii is a UFO hotspot. But what you see here is nothing else, and most likely, we don't know obviously, but it's most likely just a spent rocket. Okay, here's some footage of a spent rocket. And what this is basically, you know, these giant fuel tanks that sit on the side of rockets. At some point, they get blasted off, and they are not particularly precious. So this looks like, this is some debris from one of those tanks that's just re-entering the atmosphere. And you can actually see that some of these pieces are blinking. Right here, it has the exact same effect. So not only is it this slightly odd constellation of lights, it also has the blinking going on, which is presumably because, you know, some of the objects are not constantly on fire as they re-enter the atmosphere, and they, you know, they come on and off, and they have this kind of flickering, blinking effect going on. So I think that's what it is. I think that's what people saw over Honolulu and Hawaii. And the video that you see here are confirmed rocket body fragments re-entering the atmosphere captured by an AMOS system camera, also over Hawaii. So I would say this one is debunked as well. Give it a small debunk, a quick debunk. All right, guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown. Again, if you would like to share your clips with me, then join our Discord. The link to that is down in the description. I'm always happy to see your clips. All these clips were submitted by people not being sure what they are, so I try my best to explain them. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, join our Discord, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. I'm out. Bye.